Merry Christmas, boys and girls. Santa has delivered. Yeah, he might have given you an alcoholic father or a traumatized childhood, but you're going to be okay. We can make this life better. And Jess Frost, not Jack Frost, don't get excited. There's no snowman play here tonight, but we will learn about, how to overcome your childhood trauma. Maybe you had alcoholic parents or a little this or that, and how to rebuild your life and unleash the power within. This is my conversation with Jess Frost. We will get into your work, how you're helping highly sensitive people and children of alcoholics deal with their problems, get better. But as you are both of those and many more things, let's first get into your story. Maybe you could paint the picture of what your house was like, what some of the characters in that house were like as a child.
Yes. Okay. So growing up, I, on the face of it, had like a really privileged middle class childhood, right? Beautiful houses, beautiful areas, good schools, right? And this is very common with people who grew up in dysfunctional homes or with addiction, right? Where on the face of it, things look really great, but behind closed doors, a different story. So behind the scenes, my dad struggled with his mental and emotional health like all of his life. Very highly sensitive, deeply feeling human being, always on a quest for his purpose. Why is he here? Quite spiritual in that sense. But I saw him, going in and out of psychiatric care, emotional explosions, physically unwell when, he hurt his back at one time and was out of work. So lots of time out of work where we were kind of tiptoeing around his moods and his mental emotional health crisis, really. So that was what was kind of happening with my dad growing up. And then with my mum was like the main breadwinner. So she was always on the go. She worked in fashion. She would be traveling for work sometimes. But if she was here in the UK, she would be working late, just constantly on the go, never calm, always stressed. And we had a nanny actually. So we had a couple of people that would come in and caretake for us growing up. So behind closed doors, it was just very frantic, very scary, very unpredictable, lots of money worries. So even though on the outside we looked affluent, we'd be in heaps of debt. There would be, there was a period of time where my dad had actually joined a cult. I didn't know this at the time. My mum did, but he'd joined what is now we know a cult. But I think what he thought was almost like a spiritual self-development space. Probably see a lot of this around at the moment. But yeah, he thought he'd joined this like beautiful community when in fact it was a cult and he was sending our family's money out there. So there was all of this stuff going on behind the scenes. And we're not even talking about the alcoholism at this point. It was just stress, distress, really, behind closed doors.
Yeah, because you could look at it as like an alcohol problem, but it sounds like your father had some deeper, more important problems, and alcohol was part of that. But he was on this sort of existential, spiritual quest for, I don't know, trying to connect with something beyond himself or within himself. So it makes sense that he was attracted to this community that kind of swindled him a little bit in your family. Tell me about this cult.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't delved too much into the cult myself. I'm still waiting to have a big conversation with my dad about it to get more of the details. But all I remember is that there would be random men kind of showing up to the house and taking my dad away. They were based out in America. They were out there, and that was the aim, that he would get out there himself. Near the end, when it all came to a head, my dad started having like serious kind of like psychosis episodes. So he would be seeing things, like literally seeing the devil's faces in people. Like it was really scary. Like he was just completely so vulnerable, so vulnerable. And he left us. So I remember the day that he decided to pack up his bags and leave, right? No idea that he was going to join this cult. But I remember like drawing him a little picture and being like, "Oh, I'm going to miss you, Dad. And like, I love you." And everyone was crying. It was just heartbreaking. And I remember him kind of driving off. And then my mum, in typical fashion, was just like masked, smiley, like, "Okay, come on, girls, let's go swimming." And like my dad's just driving off to leave us to fly to America. And that's when the police actually sectioned him. They got him on the motorway and then took him straight into hospital. So he never got there. But yeah, we now know that it was a cult that was mimicking quite an innocent community with innocent beliefs and innocent values, but they were very, very toxic, narcissistic, dangerous people. That's as much as I've wanted to delve into it whilst I've been on my own healing journey, kind of balancing what's serving me to know about it. All I need to know is that it was deeply distressing and really activating for kind of abandonment wounds. But equally, I can look at it from how my dad got there, right? I'm a highly sensitive person myself. I like to believe in something bigger than me. I like to lean into that hope and that love and that community, right? So I can see how he got there. But yeah, luckily for him, he never actually made it out there because I'm not quite sure what would have happened to him if he did.
Yeah, well, I guess the focus here is the child's perspective. You're not a 5-year-old or 10-year-old or 18-year-old anymore. But what was your perspective of the alcoholism in the house at the time? Did it just seem like a normal thing, or what at the time was it shocking? Of course, now you're looking back at it as like, oh wow. But what was your perspective at the time, or maybe at various ages throughout that time?
Yeah, great question. I'd say I became more aware when I was 10 upwards. Alcohol was always present in the home. Not drinking early in the morning, anything like that, but it was always there as like a way to self-medicate. So my parents drank when they were really happy, when they were celebrating, and then they drank when they were really sad and when days were just in between. So I grew up around a culture of alcohol. And at the time, you know, when it was like the 90s here in the UK, heavy drinking was really kind of valued. There was this real binge drinking culture. We lived in a little village, so like everyone would go to like the little quaint village pub, you know, and the kids would be over there, the parents would be day drinking or drinking in the evenings, and it was just like everyone did it, so you didn't question it. There was house parties, dinner parties, like it was just very social. But I started to notice that my dad in particular wasn't behaving in the same way that other people's parents were. I was looking at these other people going, "Oh, it seems really happy and it seems really like fun." But then what was I seeing? I was seeing my dad like falling over in the lounge and needing to be carried up to bed. I'd see him hungover the next day when he was emotionally exploding and shouting at me. I'd see my mum just like they were both very happy when they had that first drink in hand. That was probably like the closest and safest I felt, weirdly, because it was like they just managed to relax for a second and they weren't inebriated at that point. It was like they just got that first drink and they were like, ah. So it was like, it was just normal. It was normal to see alcohol there. And I even started drinking quite early on. So we had like Lambrusco here, it was called, which was like a fizzy, low alcohol wine. And I'd be like, can I have that at like Sunday lunch? So I was like desperate to get drinking myself to be part of what they were doing. But yeah, as time crept on, I'd say from kind of like 12, 13 upwards, I really started to get fearful of what would happen when I saw alcohol at home and what would happen when my parents returned home from the pub or the football or something like that. So yeah, it definitely got more anxiety inducing seeing alcohol around.
So it was changing your physiology and your psychology and everything. Yeah, how did this affect you in the body and the mind?
Hugely, hugely. Like I've always been like a deep thinker. Like I worry so much. My brain is never turned off. I spend a lot of time ruminating in the past and I spend a lot of time kind of trying to micromanage the future, you know, like hyper vigilant. And I do believe like there's a real fine line for me between high sensitivity and then hypervigilance from trauma. in some of the ways that we might behave and think and feel, So I remember in my first therapy session, not my first actual session, but my first stint in therapy. And I remember saying to her, when I was about 12, I used to lay there at night and I didn't realize it at the time, but like I'd have this like constant fizziness almost in my stomach, in my belly, like a real just panic anxiety. And what I used to do as a kid is I used to tell myself that when I felt that feeling in my stomach, someone was thinking nice things about me in the world. So, like, I was already reframing the somatics of what was happening in my body, which was fear, anxiety, panic, trauma. I was reframing it to try and be something positive. So, it was my way of coping, of like trying to make sense of things, but in a positive way, was how I dealt with it. But I was very introverted. I struggled as a sensitive child and a child with trauma. I really struggled relationally with friends. I was always like, I felt like an alien in the world. I would be on the periphery of groups. I like kept myself safe by just being on the outskirts. And I had like two close friends for a long period of my life. And yeah, like it really affected my ability to connect, like that safety to be around other people as well. So I just keep myself very safe by myself a lot of the time.
How about your sister? Sometimes in these cases, siblings can kind of connect together and co-regulate each other in certain ways, etc. Or sometimes they're not. This family's just so messed up or whatever. Everyone's alone. You had your friends, but what about your sister?
Yeah. I don't want to speak too much for my sister. We are currently estranged, so it's a bit of a tricky situation. But what I've realized so much on this journey is that every sibling is going to deal with things in completely different ways. I was the elder sibling, and I can definitely see how the trauma kind of manifested in me and my behavior and how I am within the family unit, right? Because we all take on different roles in addicted homes. So for me, I was very much kind of like a caretaker, enabler, good girl, like older than my years. Whereas my sister had more of like a mascot type role, which they call it, which is like she is the fun, vibrant, keeps everyone together, makes everyone laugh. She's a comedian, she's an actress. Like she was like the glue socially, right? When I was thinking, oh God, please no, I just don't want to be here. She was like the light, right? And for a long period of our life, we had a very close relationship, very, very close relationship. I have a tattoo on my arm saying anything's possible, we're in this together. And that's her handwriting, right? So it's heartbreaking that we're in a period of space from one another. But equally, it's very common. And for anyone listening to this that has a very complex relationship with their siblings, I think especially when you move from some of these roles into empowerment and almost move from like the scapegoat and black sheep into the goat, the one that's moving out of the family that's going, hold on a minute, this isn't right. That it's really tricky. And I can't make anyone else in my family unit see what I see. I can't do the work for them. I can't do any of that. And for a lot of people, it takes courage to see what's happening behind the veil. And not everyone wants to see it. Not everyone's ready for that. So I don't have any judgment on that. But yeah, I think for big parts of my life, I don't know what I would have done had my sister not been there to share that experience with, because it was incredibly scary, incredibly frightening. But yeah, we will have completely different memories, completely different experiences. Like one of my biggest aims growing up was that my sister didn't see a lot of it. I wanted to put her in cotton wool. I wanted to protect her from everything. So I'm not shocked that she's having a completely different reaction than me, because we lived completely different lives in the same home. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Like there's so much love, but yeah, there's so much self-preservation and self-protection that I think when you start to recognize your trauma, you start to love yourself in a different way, you start to cultivate self-worth in a different way. It becomes about I am so fiercely protective of this. I'm so protective of my heart. I'm so protective of my peace and my boundaries that it doesn't matter who that person is, whether it's a family member, a colleague, a partner. Just because we're family doesn't mean that boundaries can be crossed and we don't have difficult conversations or we don't have conflict. But that is very common in dysfunctional homes where we want to turn a blind eye and we want to look away and we want to brush it all under the carpet.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a loss. Maybe it's just a temporary loss. We'll see. But I guess you're used to that. We all are. It's part of life. And that, I guess, brings up 2002 when you were 18. There was a lot of loss for you and for your family. So maybe we can get into that big turning point.
100%. Like, oh my goodness, for years in therapy, I just brushed over this year. Like, I was like, yeah, but everything was fine, right? I can deal with it all. But in that year, gosh, there was so many different things relationally that happened for me. So firstly, I was in a relationship with my first proper boyfriend, right? And he'd relocated down to where I lived and we worked in the same place, a supermarket called Safeway here in the UK. And I was on the tills and he was stacking shelves, right? And I had heard rumors that he was being unfaithful. And yeah, it was really horrendous. Long story short, I approached him and this person that I believed were being unfaithful with me, and I got completely gaslit. The girl in question, to my face lied and said she got cancer and that he was just consoling her. Like, and the fauna within me. So, what I mean by fauna is like the traumatized response of people pleasing. I just fully believed her. I was comforting her then. So the role had shifted. I'd gone from like, hold on a minute, are you cheating? Are you with my boyfriend? To, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Consoling this girl who it transpired had lied anyway, and that she'd moved into his apartment and it was just horrendous. So I was navigating my first kind of teenage heartbreak, which I think we all know how painful that feels when it's like your first love in bunny ears. So I was navigating that and the kind of humiliation, I'd say like shame, humiliation. I had to sit at work as all these other colleagues gravitated towards them. So these people that had done some horrendous stuff were getting kind of treated like royalty and like, yeah, and I was just isolated. And it was a really, I now know, traumatizing experience, not just being cheated on, but the being gaslit by someone and self-abandoning my own gut, watching those people that were my friends gravitate towards people that have really hurt me. Like, it was a really horrendous experience. And then back at home, the alcohol use in the family was getting worse. Both my parents were really struggling with their mental and emotional health and their own drinking issues. Their relationship was crumbling. Like, arguments were getting worse. They were on the cusp of separating themselves, my parents. Oh, and my anxiety, my mental health, I developed like disordered eating by this point. So it was manifesting, the trauma was manifesting in so many different ways. But then something happened that was just truly just life shattering and devastating, where we couldn't get hold of my dad's parents. And immediately my gut was telling me, this is wrong. Something bad has happened here. It's unlike them that they won't answer the phone or be in touch when they usually ring. And my dad ended up going over to break into their home and he found them. They died by suicide together. And my dad had a very fractured relationship with them. I now know how my dad was battling some really unhealed trauma, some relational trauma, some abuse. So, yeah, the family just fell apart. I'll never forget the sound of my dad crying with grief at that time. And I just, remember thinking, he's not going to survive this. Like, his alcoholism was already really bad. He already really struggled with his mental emotional health. He was out of work, hadn't been in work for a long time. I remember, saying to my mum, I had to say to my mum, "Mum, you're going to have to leave dad," because they were both just on the floor. And my mum was saying, "I just don't know how I don't know how I can cope anymore." And I literally thought, I'm going to lose both my parents. I don't know if I was the last, I feel like, I don't know if I was the last person to speak to my grandparents, but the last time I spoke to them, they'd asked me to go to the cinema with them. And I said no. I was just like a typical teenager, like, no, don't want to go, can't be asked. And that guilt, I'm still working through that now. It was in that moment that a core belief formed in me that when I say no to someone, they'll die. So the people pleaser in me took a whole new level. The fauna within me that felt I had to please people or they'll die really took another level. So all of these protective parts of me that had been there a little bit. So like the good girl, the one that did well at school, the people pleaser really ramped up, as well as my own alcohol and drug use. So it was a horrendous time, a horrendous year. And my parents did end up separating. And my dad moved into his own place just down the road from us. But just the reality of him living alone was just horrendous. It was almost worse than him being at home where I could see him, because he was struggling to care for his own hygiene. He was not looking after our family dog very well. He was living with him. He was inviting strangers to come and squat in the house. It was just squalor. So, yeah, it was a horrendous, horrendous time.
Yeah, you telling that story gets my heart racing and my breath stopped. So I wonder, I can't imagine how fast your heart was beating and how your breath and everything was at that time. It must have been a really overstimulated, jacked up nervous system. You seem fine now, but man, that must have been a stressful time. Makes sense why you went to alcohol. Maybe the alcohol and drugs and stuff were just part of college, but it was more than that, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I was already drinking, a lot socially by that time anyway, down the pub with friends and things like that. But my nervous system, I realized, has always been in threat, like always waiting for the next crisis. And even though I seem calm now, I want to say to people as well listening to this who might think I've got it all sorted, absolutely not. um, I have to work very hard to train my nervous system for calm and for joy and for presence. My nervous system, my mind got very addicted to drama, got very addicted to cortisol, as well as drugs, alcohol, all of that. It was just chaos. I got addicted to chaos. So, yeah, back then, it was a bit like a swan on water. No one knew what was happening in here, but inside it was like the feet of the swan. And that's what my whole life was like. Even back then, in that horrendous year, I don't think anyone really knew what was going on. I didn't even get any counseling, any therapy. It wasn't even a thing that we talked about in the house. There was nowhere to put that trauma. There was nowhere to put that emotion. I just cracked on and just got on with life. Like, it's wild to me now that there was no intervention or no support. I was just left to, I didn't even question it wasn't normal. I thought other people had this level of chaos and heartbreak. It's wild.
Yeah, and you're working hard this whole time and everything, and I guess eventually you woke up from that. You said earlier that you were sometimes abandoning that voice inside of yourself, but this time you didn't. Yeah, maybe you could talk about the other tattoo you have, or I guess you have more than two probably, but there's one of those that you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, 100%. So I'll just tell a little bit of a short story before I get there, but essentially kind of went off to university to study psychology to try and understand what was happening in my family. That was the only reason I did psychology, to try and unpack my own family. And then by this point, again, my dad was escalating, things were getting worse at home. So I was having to travel back home on a regular basis. Left university, scraped a third degree. I have no idea how I did it. I didn't go to lectures and spent most of the time high on alcohol and cocaine, but did it. and went into recruitment, which is where I spent 15 years of my career. Meanwhile, my dad is either in and out of halfway houses and hospitals. He did get sober, which is incredible, right? He found it wasn't through 12 steps because, in his words, he felt like it was a cult. I'm not making judgment, but it reminded him that community and the kind of religious aspect really reminded him of this cult. So he didn't do it through 12 steps. He managed to do it through his own local community and just being able to speak out his shame to save people. So he was able to kind of unburden some of the stuff that was keeping him in shame, right? Incredible that he was able to do that. But for me, I was just there kind of doing well at work. I was winning awards. I was making decent money. No one knew what was going on behind the scenes for me, where I'd do a really good job at work. I'd go home, do a run to make myself feel better, but then probably sink a bottle of wine on my own, right? And this was on repeat for years. Coffee, wine, repeat, coffee, wine, repeat. I was at a point in my career where things had started to bubble for me. I was starting to have panic attacks at work. Never had that before. I'd got a really toxic boss who was shaming my panic attacks, shaming my crying, shaming my feelings. And I got signed off work and I was put on meds for the first time in my life. I really tried to resist that, but I surrendered and was like, I need some help. I'd taken a job that was a bit different, that was working in events in Bristol in the UK. And they sent me out to New York, where I was recruiting internally for them, some big C-suite roles. I was living in Brooklyn, working in Manhattan. Literally, my desk looked out over the Hudson River. It was like Instagram perfect, right? And I'd be there on my stoop at the weekends with my cold brew on Instagram, like painting the picture as always that my life was great. But this was where my life changed. And referencing the tattoo that you mentioned, I decided one day after lots of partying, lots of numbing out, lots of emotional explosions at work out in New York, where my relationship back in the UK was crumbling. I'd found drugs out there, so I was partying way more than I should have been. It was work hard, play hard, a city that never sleeps. And one day I lost it and I handed my notice in at this job. I was due to be going out to Miami after this job had finished to be setting up an office out there. So my life was made, right? It was like these amazing opportunities. I just I threw the towel in. I burnt it all down. And I had to walk back over Brooklyn Bridge with my backpack on, full of coffee cups and shoes from my desk. And I looked at this office block and I was like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? I'm going to have to tell my family. I'm going to have to tell my boyfriend that I've got no job. I was like 20K in debt. No one knew about. It was just flooded me. But also there was this glimmer. There was this like fire within me of like, you're not meant to be doing this. This isn't your path. You're meant to be doing something completely different. And my life crumbled at that point. Like I came back to the UK, my relationship ended, I left Bristol. I was sleeping on my mum's couch with a massive suitcase with my whole life in it, looking on Facebook with people getting married and engaged and having babies. And I'm going, oh my God, I am single. I'm jobless. I'm 20K in debt. I've got no home. I'm 33. But that's why I got the Brooklyn Bridge tattooed on my arm to remind me of that time, that pivotal time, as dark as it was the making of me, because it got me to journey back to who I really am and actually co-create a life that actually serves me, that actually works for me and actually gives back in a way that just is beyond my wildest dreams. So I don't regret anything that's brought me to that point. All of it is like this tapestry of my life that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't be here on this podcast. I wouldn't have met the people I've met. I wouldn't be doing the work I do had I not gone through that. So yeah.
And it sounds like you didn't know exactly what the new path was or what the North Star was or whatever, or maybe you had an inkling of it, but you walked across that bridge and took another path. What path opened up after that? I guess, yeah, to where you are now, but maybe I guess we got to fill in more of the story from there. The happy part.
Yeah, so it's so funny. I was on like a some people have said this when they've had like a breakdown, that it's not always been really dark. It's been actually really euphoric. And I had this like burst of energy in New York before I came home. I literally started a new company, did a website, like in this like hyper focused state. Like it was at the time like a consultancy. I always knew I loved helping people. I think because of my recruitment career, like I was very good at kind of problem solving and matching people to jobs and things like that. So it was always going to be in some way like coaching consultancy or something around that. But I just needed money. I needed a security. So I came back to the UK and just found a really secure, safe job in recruitment with people I know where I could get my head down, make some money, and start to heal. So that was when I really started to dig a bit deeper into codependency, which is really common for those people who've grown up around addiction. It's where your sense of self is just non existent. So you get very blurred with where you begin and other people begin and end. So you kind of take responsibility for other people's stuff. You feel and take on their emotions. You become very enmeshed. And that was a dynamic playing out in my relationships. I often took on like a bit of a hero rescuer role where there was this weird dynamic where someone else is probably struggling with their own crisis or addiction. And I would feel like I can help them, right? Really toxic dynamic. So I started to really unpack that. And it actually was when lockdown hit that my self development took a whole new level and the vision of my purpose came to life. I think that space that we had shut in at home, I was so like grateful in a sense. It sounds weird to say with all of that horrendousness happening in the world. I was grateful for the space to just go inwards. And I was listening to all the podcasts, reading all the books. I joined my first kind of confidence empowerment program online, hired my first life coach. And it was through those experiences that I had such transformations. I was able to shift so much of this like script that I'd been living that I was like, I need to do this. Like, this has changed my life. And that's when I started to retrain. I started to train in coaching. I started to train in loads of different modalities over the years up to this point. And then it was then in 2021 that I decided to leave my very safe, secure corporate job and take the leap with like no security into self employment and give it a go. So that's how it began. It began because I did it myself. I'd seen the power of this work and seen the power of connecting with people doing similar stuff. But it started off very much kind of surface level mindset to begin with. I was not even talking trauma or adult child of an alcoholic at this point.
It might be beside the point, but you quit that recruiting job in New York and then you went to another recruiting job in the UK. So I'm curious. Well, you did mention that there's a pretty toxic place. They're kind of making fun of you and all that there. So I would probably want to leave that too. But maybe you can get into, of course, we need money. So yeah, screw it. I have to get another job like this. But was there like some a difference between these two jobs that like it wasn't just recruiting, it's something beyond that, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was very fortunate. The last company that I worked for were really good. They genuinely cared. They really looked after the staff and they left me to it. They trusted me, which is really important for a child of an alcoholic. To have people that just trust you and put that faith in you. I was able to just do my thing and had a good laugh while doing it. But the thing that I struggled with, a lot of the traumatized coping mechanisms don't work well with the corporate world because they are manipulated. They are used. They serve capitalism. It serves the corporate world, right? To be an overgiver, to have no sense of self, to be a perfectionist, to overwork, right? So what I started to recognize is like, oh my God, I don't have the power to create an environment that really serves a complex trauma survivor. And companies will do their very best to look after everyone. But the reality is, most companies, it is about the return. It's about the return of your energy. It's about the return of your commitment, right? And there was a lot of beliefs, especially years ago, that was like, leave your shit at the door. Don't bring your personal life into work. And what I'd noticed for me was when I kind of hit my 30s, when I'm just finding my flow in my work life, that was when my trauma was hitting me. Like, it wasn't when it happened, it was later in life. So it's really hard managing flashbacks, managing these things that are kind of surfacing that need real gentle care and nurturance. When I was working, my shift started at 7 a.m. I had to be at my desk at 7. And I didn't often stop working because I'd be texting people and recruiting at home until like 10, 11 at night. So I was burning out. I didn't have the resources to heal, whether a company's really well intended or not. So part of the reason for me about becoming self-employed was that I could have a company that I ran that catered for my healing, that catered as a woman, a cyclical woman who has different hormones shifting into perimenopause and menopause, like who has menstrual cycles, who has ebbs and flows of energy. I wanted to create this environment where I could thrive, but also I'm undiagnosed, probably ADHD as well, where I can really, really maximize my neurodivergence of hyperfocus and intense productivity with burning, like crashing out. I need to just do nothing. So it was a real mix. It wasn't because I really hated my job. I actually, when I handed my notice in, the CEO said to me, like, Jess, what are you doing? You're at your peak. Like I was. He's like, you're flying. He was like, can we go part-time? Can we take a day off? Like, desperate to keep this situation going, right? Because I was thriving in my job. But I said to him, and I'll never forget it, I was like, I have to leave now. I have to leave now because I'm at my peak. I have to leave now at my peak because my belief in myself is so high. I don't want to leave when my confidence is on the floor because that's not conducive to me building this business. So it was for that reason, it was recognizing that actually there is a freedom that I can create that many corporate organizations, especially with hundreds of employees, really struggle to get that balance right. And at the end of the day, they're there to make money. So yeah, it was a real mix of things, really.
Yeah, when the voice is calling and the fire's burning, you gotta just follow it sometimes because it's now or never. I interviewed this guy Keith Kurlander recently, and he was telling me a kind of similar story. Actually, I've heard this from a lot of people. They have this fancy job or a job offer, and then they have like this freak out or whatever, and they leave it. Yeah, he got offered this really nice job in Wall Street, and he's on the train in his suit, which he didn't belong in, and he just started like freaking out on the subway and calling them up, and I'm not doing it. And then he had like $50 in his bank account. He went up to living in tents and stuff like that, and I don't know, hanging out with yogis or whatever. And now he runs this like psychedelic psychiatry institute, which is very cool. But yeah, I've heard this story from like a lot of different people. So it sometimes leads to great things. You got to listen to that. And like you said, maybe if you waited another couple of years, that dog inside of you would have just stopped barking, and you just would have kept going and turned to a robot or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think for me, the way I describe it is I like to think inside of me are lots of different parts of me that have helped me survive. And they've served me in so many ways. Like I was talking about, the caretaker, the good girl, the rescuer, the one that gets achievements and gathers certificates, like all these amazing things have got me to where I am. But when I think about that moment, a bit like what you just described there, where they're on the subway, they're in this suit, something was happening where it was like all the foundations were shaking. Like these parts of me were screaming, I'm done. And I remember like I had periods of my own suicidal ideation, like really strong. I went out to New York again just to see if I could get a job out there. And like, yeah, just remember sitting in this room going, I don't want to be here anymore. And it wasn't that wanted to die at all. It was like parts of me were done. These parts that had to run the show were sick of it. And like you were saying, that guy in the suit, like suddenly it feels so alien. It's like, this is not me. There is a me that is waiting to be unleashed. And there is a fire in me burning that could so easily in this world be blown out. And like, that's what you were saying. I just have to make this leap now. If I don't now, when will I? And it's one of the most courageous things where a lot of people would look at you and go, you are crazy. They probably still do when they look at me. They're like, she's not okay. She's not okay.
But if you look back at yourself, you're like, "Oh my god, I'm so proud of myself. How did I take that leap of faith? I want to live like that every day if I could, but I guess that you just explode." But I mean, yeah, those are the beautiful moments in life. That's when you're like, "Oh wow, I'm alive. I did it." And it looks really irrational and stupid usually. That's the thing. That's why we don't usually do it, because usually you're like, "What are you doing?" But it feels amazing. And looking back on it, it's usually like, "Wow, that was pretty amazing of me. I couldn't do that now. I'm too old for that."
That's it. I thought I was this Sunday I ran like an in-person breathwork event near me, and I do like conscious connected breathwork with people, and I was stood waiting for the train, and my partner Nick, who's my life and business partner of the 3E space, like he was out coaching a women's football team, right? And I was just stood there. I was like, "Oh my God, our life is so different. This is incredible." Like 8 years ago, I would never have even dreamt that I'd be doing this, or it'd be a glimmer of hope. And it is, for me, it's like a timeline of courageous decisions, of like courageous decisions where you don't know the outcome. You can't control it, which a lot of us want to do, like white knuckle it and know what's going to happen, or wait till we're ready. It was just a timeline of loads of little courageous decisions that got us to here. And I'm so thankful to that day that I walked out, because all the times I've done those things that other people and me at the time went, what the hell are you doing? Have actually led me here.
And then the hard part can be like you take that leap or whatever, and you have this plan of, hopefully being where you are now, but you're just walking through this fog. It's like this podcast. I feel like I'm just walking through this fog and walking through this fog with no results and no results. But gradually, it's like, oh, the fog starts clearing, and oh wow, I'm here. Oh, I'm looking different, a little bit different now. I'm still not there, but this is long trudge through the fog. Was there some of that for you as well before? It must have been, but that's the hard part of like, I keep going even though there's no results, no one sees me. I'm just like, why am I doing this?
All the time. Like all the time. Even like yesterday. The fog, I don't know whether it's just an entrepreneur experience or whether it's like for me complex trauma as well. But there are always those moments of fog. Like either practically where I'm thinking, how the hell am I paying the bills? Like looking ahead and going, oh my word, how are we going to keep a roof over our heads, right? Where we're in that like crazy entrepreneurial spirit of like, it's going to be fine. Let's keep believing. Let's keep taking action, right? Where secretly there's a part of you going, oh my God, this is terrifying. Get a job. Like, what are you doing? To those fog days where I had one recently, which is really common for me, where I pendulate between feeling too much and not enough, where part of me goes, just quit. No one really sees you. You're a laughing stock. You're too intense for people. And then you're not enough. So maybe you need to look different or train more, gather more certificates, and then the relational trauma kicks in of like, you don't have lots of people around you because parts of you like to keep yourself quite safe with your small group of friends and your small unit. So there's always these days of fog for me. There are also days where the fog clears and it's like, like everything makes sense. I'm on purpose. Like even when I haven't got things landing for me yet, there is this real trust that it's on its way. And if I keep showing up and if I keep believing and if I keep taking action, it's going to come, right? And I think rooting in my values of why I'm doing it, all those things help me on the days where the fog literally feels debilitating some days of just like, I'm crazy. Just be like them. Be like the majority of people where it's like, I've got a secure job, I've got a pension, I've got my house, my marriage, my children. Like we are not married, we are child free. We rent, we are entrepreneurs. Like, we don't do the things that the majority of people are doing. So there are days where you're like, am I the broken one? So something terribly, terribly wrong with me. So yeah, the fog is real. The fog is real.
What are some of the things or tools or techniques or whatever you want to call them that you found that helped you with your trauma, etc., and that you are now using to help others? You mentioned breath work; that's one of the big ones. But there are others, so we can talk about breath work. But let's at least list out what else you got.
Yes. So things that help me. I have a incredible therapist slash coach. She's called Sarah Ann Sager. She's IFS specialist, so internal family systems specialist. What we do with internal family systems therapy is we work with those parts that I mentioned, those parts of us that are frozen inside of us, very young, that learnt to protect us, to navigate our trauma. So she is like, oh, so needed. I'm never going to be done. I'm never going to be fully healed. I like to always kind of have that support network as someone that used to lone wolf and be hyper independent. Having someone that is a safe place for me to unpack stuff as well as focus on the future is really important. Breath work, conscious connected breath work, like we mentioned, a transformational breath work, that is someone that learnt to not feel and to push my emotions down. It is a surefire way to get out of my head into my body, stop my brain from trying to hyper control everything, trust, surrender, drop into my limbic system and my emotional body, and contain, hold, see, feel the emotions that I'm really meant to be with and release them. So in terms of like my grief, which I didn't get to feel growing up, I get to release some of that. I get to be in my joy, which I wasn't allowed to feel. I get to be in my rage and my anger, like all of that. So breathwork's huge. I do EFT tapping a lot. That really helps me again to release emotion, but also rewire my subconscious beliefs. So the real stubborn ones, like I'm too much, not enough, like having these tools that I can tap into that allow me to be with what is in here, the fears, the anxiety, the beliefs, and actually help myself move through it without toxic positivity, without just avoiding it, right? Peer support, groups, co-regulation with other people in the same boat. So I am part of peer support groups as well as running peer support groups for adult children of alcoholics and those that have had emotionally immature parents. Oh, just they're the main ones that are part of my life, but also part of the coaching that I do with my clients and the spaces that I operate in. So it's very much the rules that we learn as children of alcoholics and in dysfunctional homes is don't talk, don't feel, don't trust. So everything I do for myself and for others is about reversing that, allowing ourselves to feel, being with our emotions, allowing ourselves to talk and having safe people who see, hear and hold us, and then allowing ourselves to connect back with the body, build self-trust and help ourselves build trust with other people. So yeah, they're the kind of core things for me.
Yeah, well, the breath is very cool because you could do it even if you are alone, but I'm sure it's a bit easier if you're with others. But it seems like the other overarching kind of theme or connector between these other things you mentioned is going outside of yourself. I feel like this for myself too. Is like once you've somehow maybe you get lucky, you just get this relationship, or you get this dog or whatever, where you're like, oh, I'm not gonna just go at this alone. Like we're gonna work together. And you could do that with a coach, for example, maybe with someone like you. That's like the big turning. That was like a big turning point for me. It's like, oh wow, I can trust other people. I can work together. I'm not going to run away from this person or whatever. I'm not going to be. I was scared of dogs, literally, etc. So that was like, whoa, I'm calming down. This is cool. But like other people or other creatures or whatever seems to be a big part of it. Did you have a sort of transformational relationship like that for yourself?
There's been so many, so many. Yeah, I'm really thankful to the people that I chose to help me on this journey. I have like quite a strong mother wound, as I call it, like generational wounds that have passed down my female lineage. And I'm really proud that I chose women to work with, right? Because it would have been really easy for me to be like, oh, don't trust you. You're going to hurt me. I'm not going to invest in you. And actually, the people that I intuitively chose were women. So chose women empowerment groups where it was led by a female. My first coaches were female. My coach now is female. I have a group that mostly is women and non-binary people, right? It's not to say I wouldn't work with men, but I'm really, really pleased because each time we show ourselves and our system, as I call it, like these little ones inside, our inner children, when we show them a different experience, part of us heals and actually part of us grows more tolerance for that. So I've been able to kind of heal so much relational trauma in relation because it's like you say, it's hard to, you can't heal necessarily on your own. There's things that you can do on your own, but healing comes with the community. Healing comes in relation. So when you can make that really scary step to maybe email them back and say, yes, I'm in, or put your credit card into that, investment that you're going to do for yourself, that is such a huge step of like leaning into the discomfort, leaning into that fear, but hopefully with the right trained people, with the right safe people, people that can hold you in a really safe space, not try and fix you or rescue you or have this like hero guru complex, but just be able to just allow you to come back to your power. Oh my God, the healing capacity and the healing for the nervous system, for relation and people and building trust in them and you is really, really powerful. So yeah, there's been lots.
So how does it feel like going to work now? I guess it doesn't feel like going to work, but it's quite different than that office in Manhattan or wherever. I've never been to New York, so
Very different. Like I literally travel from just upstairs down to here. But no, it's amazing. It is amazing. And I get to do it with my life and business partner as well. Like it's very different. I get to kind of decide when I work, when I don't work, like who I work with, who I don't work with, what collaborations feel aligned, what don't. And there's just so much freedom. There's so much autonomy. And yeah, I think to be doing something right now that the world needs with everything that we're navigating, I think is just absolute privilege. So to be sitting here, right, at 9:30 at the morning with my coffee, having a chat with you is just like, wow, this is my life now, So yeah, incredible, incredible.
yeah. And some people listening are like getting jealous and like, I hate her. She has such a nice life. I want that. But then if they listened, they would have heard the backstory. So it wasn't just given to you. And I guess the point there is we all can kind of get there. It might take longer for some people than others, and some people maybe just can't. But I mean, most of us can. But it's going to require certain things. I guess we mentioned them. Just trudging through that fog, saying goodbye to some money and some status temporarily. I don't know. Do you have any other things that help us get to have a day of work like you're having?
It is honestly, for me, it is about reparenting me, right? If I were to let the conditioned part of me and the script that I was so used to living run the show, there's no way I'd be where I am now. I have to lead myself every day through fear, through anxiety, through the unknown, through joy, right? Which my parts of me can find really challenging. So some people think that they need to cross a finish line of confidence before they do the thing, or that they need to get loads and loads of certificates. I need to be fully trained. I need to do this, that, and the other. And it's all things outside of themselves, right? I need to have this many followers. I need to have a blue tick. I need to, whatever that is. The best thing I ever did was go in here, do the inner work, continue every damn day to lead myself, to allow my adult 41-year-old Jess to lead and not my traumatized teenager or someone like that. Because honestly, I know when I'm in that energy, I'm capable of anything. Yes, there are roadblocks. Yes, there are limitations. Yes, I have a privilege that many people don't, right? I know that. But the power is here. It's always within us. There is so much we underestimate that if we do this work in here, let go of some of the old scripts that we believe about ourselves, start writing a new script of what would be the new script of this life that you dream of. If, like you just said there, if you're listening to this and there is a pang of jealousy, lean into that. What is that life you really want that you're suppressing? What would that script look like? What would you believe about yourself? How would you think and feel and lead and hold yourself? That's the power. not waiting for you to be thin enough, clever enough, qualified enough, not attached to status, labels, qualifications. The power is always within you. When you can express yourself authentically, when you can use your voice, when you can take up space and you can work with fear, with anxiety, with all of that stuff, God knows where you could be. 100%.
And what's it like for someone who's being coached by you? Yeah, what's that like?
So I always say to people, right, sometimes we say, be in a safe space. Like to say like safe enough, because the work I do, right, I do not want to enable you to stay where you are. So it's not always going to be nice and fluffy. I will hold the mirror up at times. I will challenge. I'll reflect back, because what we want to do is show our nervous system a new normal, and that isn't comfortable. We want to be expanding what we believe about ourselves, expanding what we think is possible for ourselves. So I like to call it as like, I have a really strong ability to hold space. So when someone is struggling, when things are really heavy, or maybe they're kind of unpacking something, we're not going to sit like in therapy, but maybe there is something coming up from them from their history. I can hold space really compassionately for that. And then equally, I can be that cheerleader, but I can be that coach that is not going to allow you to listen to the old BS of what you've told yourself. And what we'll do is they will develop safety with me to speak their mind, to build this like psychological safety to be who they really are, to be messy, to be imperfect, to feel their feelings, to honor all of it. They don't have to, especially if they're children of alcoholics, they might want to mask in front of me. They might want to make me to believe a certain thing about themselves. I want them to take that mask down. I want them to have that space for them to just let all of that shit go. And then we can start to really take action as the person that they know they want to be going forward. So it's not comfortable all the time, but hopefully they get a flavor of my energy. They get that precious energy that I do really save for my clients, This like, I believe that anything is possible, and I want that person to believe that as well. But it's not always going to be easy, and I'm going to be there walking alongside them.
Is Instagram your preferred social media platform, or is it LinkedIn, or is it your website, or where do you want people to go?
Instagram is where I am my most unfiltered. Instagram is where I speak my full truth. So I much prefer Instagram. I do love Insta. That is where I mostly hang out, but I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm also on the TikTok occasionally. But yeah, Instagram is where I tend to hang out the most.
Okay, cool. Well, this is really fun. This is a really easy conversation for me. I really enjoyed it, and I'm a little bit pumped up. Unfortunately,
Yes.
it's evening now, so you might be disrupting my sleep. I'm just kidding.
Oh no.
No, it's good. I think it's time to go though. But yeah, this was fun. Let's keep in touch. If people want to get in touch with you as well, they can hit up your Instagram, which I'll link up. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's been so fun chatting to you, and thank you to everyone listening. You've got this.